Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're looking at a really interesting article by IT journalist Makino Takafumi. It digs into this huge trend that's reshaping how people shop in China. It's called Guochao national trend, and it's basically about young Chinese consumers leaning much more towards domestic brands and, well, traditional culture too. So our goal here is to really get under the hood. Why is this happening? What does Guochao actually look like? And maybe most importantly, what does it mean if you're, trying to connect with consumers in China now? The sources suggest it's not simple. It's pretty fascinating stuff.
Absolutely. And it's definitely not just some fleeting trend. The material we're looking at suggests this is a real fundamental change. It's being driven by the younger generations, the ones who've grown up alongside China's, well, incredible recent transformation.
Okay, so let's try and unpack this then. What is Guchao exactly? At its core, it seems to be this big shift, right? A preference for Chinese-made products across loads of categories. And it's really centered on young people, those born after 2000, the Finlandese kids, and even the '05s, which is such a contrast to, say, the '90s or early 2000s. Back then, foreign brands were everything, weren't they? And a lot of old Chinese brands just vanished.
Exactly. And it's not monolithic. The analysis breaks it down into maybe three layers, you could say. The first one is almost subconscious. People are picking domestic stuff simply because the quality, the performance, it's just gotten really good. They're genuinely competitive now. So it's often the logical choice, especially for the price.
Okay, so quality improvement, that's layer one. Makes sense. What else is going on?
Well, the second layer is a bit more conscious. It stems from a growing confidence in China's economy, its global standing. There's definitely a layer of national pride there, leading people to actively look for and support Chinese brands.
Right, it's sort of buy local but driven by achievement.
Kind of. And then there's a third layer, which is really interesting, this golfing elements idea.
Yeah.
It's about a real interest, especially among the young in traditional Chinese culture, in history, even the history of modern China. For them, it's not necessarily heavy political stuff. It's history they learned about, maybe saw in cool TV shows or games. They see the aesthetics, the stories, and they connect with it. It feels fresh to them, not like something from their parents' difficult memories.
That brings us to a really important point when the source seems keen to clarify. Is this just, nationalism? Like, are young people actively boycotting foreign stuff because of trade wars or politics?
Yeah, that's a common take, but the analysis suggests it's not quite the main story for most people. Sure, you might get some loud voices shouting Chinese should buy Chinese for purely ideological reasons. But for the majority of young consumers, they seem incredibly pragmatic. It really comes down to performance, quality, price. If the Chinese product wins on those fronts, that's what they buy. It feels more like straightforward market competition than a political boycott.
And the evidence is there, right? Like, look at the iPhone.
Exactly. iPhones still sell really well in China. If a foreign product has a strong appeal, maybe it's the user experience, the ecosystem, a particular feature, people still buy it. The argument in the source is, if a foreign brand is struggling, it's probably because it got outcompeted on merit by a domestic player, not just because it's foreign. Saying, oh, they just don't like foreign brands anymore might just be an excuse for not keeping up.
Okay, this is where it gets really tangible. Let's look at some of these new national goods, the actual products and brands riding this wave. And you absolutely have to start with Hanfu. Traditional Chinese clothing, it's exploded. The numbers are just huge. Like over 6 billion yuan in 2020, something like 113 billion yen. Millions of fans buying multiple outfits a year. It's a phenomenon.
It really is, and it happens so fast. There's a story in the source about 15 years back, someone wore Hanfu to a party, and people thought it was a Japanese kimono. That's how completely off the radar it was, even within China itself.
Wow, so what brought it back?
Mostly popular culture. Historical TV dramas, smartphone games, they featured heroines looking really stunning in Hanfu. It made these traditional clothes look fashionable, desirable to young women. It started off niche, maybe like cosplay, then parties, and now, well, you actually see people wearing it out in trendy districts in Beijing, like Sanlitun.
Right.
Not everyday wear for most, but definitely more visible.
And this cultural trend actually reshaped manufacturing, didn't it?
Oh, massively. Take Cao County in Shandong. It used to make lots of casual wear, pajamas, things like that. Then Guochao hits, Hanfu takes off. Suddenly there's huge demand. So many factories there just pivoted. Hanfu, structurally, can be simpler to make than some modern clothes, and because it's seen as a hobby or special occasion wear, it can sell for more. Now you've got like over 600 factories in that one county churning out Hanfu, often blending traditional designs with modern touches.
Amazing. And it's not just new trends like Hanfu. Older brands are getting a new lease on life too, right? Like Pechalin.
Right. That cosmetics company from way back in 1931, famous for that classic blue tint of hand cream, the really retro one. For ages, it was totally seen as grandma's hand cream, almost obsolete, nearly disappeared in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, I remember those ends.
But then, in the 2010s, they figured it out. They embraced e-commerce, platforms like Pinduoduo that young people use. They started listening to social media using live streaming. They tapped into that retro appeal, but also highlighted natural ingredients. They basically managed to connect that nostalgic vibe with what young women today actually care about.
And warrior shoes. Similar story.
Very similar. Founded back in 1927, known for that distinctive red F-shaped line. They declined massively when brands like Nike and Adidas came in. People saw them as cheap, daggy gym shoes. They actually went bankrupt at one point.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. But then Guochao happens. And suddenly, that simple, classic design looks vintage, cool, retro. Young people started picking them up again. They've had this incredible third revival. Now they're a popular streetwear brand, sitting right alongside the big international names. What was uncool to their parents is now stylish.
So it's products, but it's also more than that. This Guochao thing is showing up in experiences too.
Definitely. That's where the goofing elements come in again, beyond just product design. It's about weaving Chinese style and culture into experiences to make them appealing. And it has to be done well, not just slapping a dragon on something. It needs sophistication.
Yeah, you see it popping up everywhere now, like those Feiyu sneakers that teamed up with that Forbidden City TV show. Using the palace colors, subtle embroidery, and keeping the price reasonable, that's hitting the mark.
Exactly. Or cosmetics. Flora says new they did a whole series inspired by the silver craftsmanship of the Miao ethnic minority, really intricate designs. Or Perfect Diary, they worked with Chinese National Geography magazine. Imagine Chinese landscapes right there on your eyeshadow palette. It's about integrating culture in a way that feels authentic and beautiful.
And what about actual experiences people are having?
Well, there's red tourism, visiting places important to China's modern history, like Jinggangshan or Yanyan. And the key point the source makes is, for young people, this often isn't like forced political homework. It's framed, and often felt, as just genuine interest in their country's past, like visiting historical battlefields or monuments anywhere else in the world. The numbers show it's huge, especially among the post-80s and 90s generations, and the post-Erase's involvement grew massively in 2020.
Interesting. What else?
You've got Hanfu photo studios cropping up. For people who like the idea of wearing it and getting great pictures, but maybe aren't ready to wear it down the street. Or these ancient-style mystery games, like live-action role-playing, but set in historical dynasties. You dress up, solve clues. It's immersive.
That sounds kind of fun, actually.
Right. And museums are getting creative, too. The Henan Museum has these cultural relic restoration blind boxes. You get a block of clay with ceramic shards hidden inside. You have to carefully dig them out, like an archaeologist, and then piece them together to make a replica of a relic. It makes history hands-on, plus taps into that whole collectible blind box trend. Super popular.
That really shows how broad this cultural interest is. Okay, let's circle back to the why. Why now? Why this big surge, especially with the youngest generation? There was survey data on this, wasn't there?
Yes. A survey called the 2021 New Youth Domestic Product Consumption Report. It looked at preferences across generations. Older generations, like those born in the 60s, had a strong preference for domestic goods, but largely because that's all there was back then. As foreign goods flooded in, that preference dropped. It actually hit its lowest point with a generation born in the 90s, but then, boom, with a generation born after 2000, the 00, it shoots right back up again. They are really driving this Guochao wave.
So why them specifically? What did the survey say about their reasons for buying Chinese brands?
That's the crucial part. When you ask the 90-00 why they choose domestic, the answers are overwhelmingly practical. Top reasons: high quality, excellent functions, and high cost performance. Value for money.
Ah, so it's about the product itself.
Exactly. Contrast that with the older generations. Their reasons were more mixed. Yes, product features mattered, but also things like, I just like domestic products, or it feels like the right thing to do, buying domestic. The big difference seems to be, older generations often bought domestic because they had to or felt they should. Young people today are buying domestic because, frankly, the products are just good. They stand up on their own merits against international competition.
Which brings us back to the iPhone thing again. If it's all about product merit, why does the iPhone still do well, even if some Chinese phones beat it on specific specs?
Right? That's the apparent paradox. The iPhone might lag on, say, camera zoom or charging speed, or maybe screen tech compared to the latest from Oppo or Vivo, but the source suggests its enduring appeal, its high retention rate, comes down to the overall package: ease of use, the ecosystem, reliability. It just works smoothly for the average user, automating complexity. Some cutting-edge Chinese phones might push one or two features really hard, but maybe the overall balance isn't quite there for everyone compared to the iPhone's, polished all-around experience. It reinforces the idea that it's the product's value proposition, not its passport, that ultimately wins.
Okay, so putting this all together, what's the message for foreign companies trying to sell in China today? It sounds like the old strategies just relying on being a foreign brand or a premium import are basically dead in the water.
That's the blunt takeaway from the analysis, yes.
Hmm.
The game has changed. The only way to really succeed now seems to be through direct head-to-head competition. You need to genuinely beat the Chinese domestic offerings on at least one key dimension: quality, function, or price.
Which sounds incredibly challenging. Quality differences for many standard products have shrunk dramatically. And competing on price against local companies, that's always tough for foreign firms.
It is tough, which is why the source suggests the biggest opportunity might lie in function. But not just adding more bells and whistles. It means real innovation, maybe coming at problems from a completely different angle. Thinking about user needs or desires that maybe local companies, being in that specific cultural context, haven't focused on. The example used was something like Sharp's IoT pet toilet that also monitors the pet's health. That might seem novel and genuinely useful to a Chinese consumer, perhaps reflecting a different perspective on pet care or proactive health tech that isn't already saturated locally. It's about offering something truly distinct.
So it's a fair fight now. You have to win on merit.
Pretty much. And zooming out one last time, the source really stresses that this isn't just top-down nationalism being pushed on people. It describes it more as a kind of natural discovery of one's own country. You see parallels elsewhere, right?
Yeah.
Americans getting interested in Revolutionary War history, Japanese designers incorporating traditional motifs. It's a phase of cultural self-discovery.
And the analysis connects this timing to China's broader development.
Yeah, there's a really interesting point made there. The idea is that perhaps China's huge economic and technological leaps in recent decades have, well, maybe allowed people, especially the younger generation, to move past some of the more difficult, complex periods of recent history. Things like the Cultural Revolution or Tiananmen events their parents or grandparents lived through directly. For young people without that direct, often painful experience, there might be less baggage. They can engage with their country's products, its culture, its history, maybe more freely, appreciating them on their current terms without being weighed down quite so much by the recent past.
Right. So wrapping up this deep dive, the main takeaway seems clear. Guochao and Guofeng are real, they're significant, and they're likely here to stay. They're driven by young Chinese consumers feeling pride in their country's progress, valuing the improved quality of domestic goods, and genuinely connecting with their culture, both traditional and modern. And crucially, their choices seem rooted in pragmatic factors: quality, function, price, not just flag waving.
Absolutely. And that means any business, foreign or domestic, needs to understand this shift. The old assumptions just don't hold. You have to compete on merit, deliver real value, and understand what truly resonates with today's Chinese consumer.
And maybe the final thought to leave you with, based on this material: consider how a nation's rapid development, its economic power, its tech prowess,
Yeah.
how that can fundamentally reshape how its own citizens see their culture, their history, themselves. It's this intricate dance between progress, identity, and the marketplace, and it's profoundly changing the landscape of global consumption. Definitely something to keep thinking about.